Slept with my ex last night. We're back together. I'm keeping everything we built. That was the text. No greeting, no apology, just execution. I read it once, then again. 8 years of marriage, gone in 33 words. I didn't yell, didn't break the phone. I just sat there in my truck, engine humming, hands still. Then I typed one word back. Understood. That's it. That was the last time I ever reacted to her with emotion. Because the moment I hit send, something in me switched off. She thought she ended a marriage. She didn't know she'd just started a reckoning. Men like me don't chase revenge with noise. We build it in silence. If you've ever been that quiet man before the storm, stay with me, subscribe, and watch what happens when calm becomes power. Silence used to scare me. After that text, it felt like armor. I drove through town with the windows up and the sports radio fading to static, the kind of late-night quiet only back roads know. Headlights skimmed over shuttered storefronts, a lone gas pump, a dark Little League field. That's when muscle memory took over, left at the light for home. But something in me said no. I rolled past my street and kept going. Every married man knows this feeling. You can't walk back into the same house and pretend it's still yours, not tonight. Up ahead, the neon sign of the Route 9 diner cut through the dark like a landing strip. I pulled in, engine ticking, hands steady. Home would have been a fight or a scene. The diner promised a table, a refill, and 10 minutes to think without anyone asking what was wrong. I shut the engine off and let the quiet decide my next move. The bell over the door did its little ring, and the same night waitress gave me the same nod. Black coffee, no sugar. Habit instead of comfort. I took the corner booth that looks out at the parking lot and stared at the chrome napkin holder until the clock over the register read 12:17. 3 things settled in. I'm not sleeping tonight, I'm not begging anyone to stay, and I'm not losing what I built. Men my age learn to solve problems in straight lines. Work the list, make the call, move the ball downfield. I scrolled to Graham's number. He's the guy who shows up when a tire blows at 2 a.m. I didn't explain. I didn't vent. I need Colleen's number, your wife's friend, the attorney. He heard it in my voice and sent it without questions. The coffee tasted sharper. The room felt clearer. I breathed once, steady, and decided that the next hour would belong to me. I called and got voicemail. Fine, clean, simple, no shake in the words. Name's Michael Caldwell. I need a divorce filing. Fast. There's infidelity, and I have a written confession in text. I also need a restraining order review. She threatened to take everything. I left my email, my number, set the phone face down. In the diner mirror, a tired guy looked back, still calm, still here. I paid in cash and sat for exactly 1 hour. That quiet became its own clock. Every minute, a small part of the old life stepped back. On the 58th, the phone buzzed. Unknown number. I answered. Michael? Colleen, I got your message. 9 a.m. Monday. Bring the text and any financial records. We'll move fast. Her tone sounded like someone who cleans up wrecks for a living. Paperwork suddenly felt like a life raft. I nodded to no one, slid the receipt into my wallet, and walked to the truck with a plan. Driving home from the diner, I let one memory in, just one, like opening a window and closing it fast. We met at a charity event. White lights, rented smiles, a band playing something from the 90s. Lauren laughed like every door in the room would open for her. She liked steak on Fridays, weekend trips, and the kind of furniture catalogs that make men sigh at the price tags. I told myself it was love because love is what you call it when you're working 2 jobs of the same life, provider and peacemaker. Somewhere along the way, I stopped asking what we were building and just kept paying the invoices. A middle-aged man doesn't need fireworks to see the truth. He needs a quiet drive and one honest sentence. Here's mine. I hadn't been a husband. I'd been funding a performance. The applause was loud until the bill showed up. Once I named it, the anger thinned and direction took its place. I remembered the just-in-case card she added me to last month. Authorized user, not joint. Men forget little things until the little things save them. At the kitchen table, I opened the laptop and logged in. The page loaded slow, like it knew. First line, Presidential suite at the Grand View, 3 nights. Next, champagne that costs more than my first car payment. Then the one that felt like a bat to the ribs, private jet charter, round trip. My finger didn't shake. I just scrolled and let the numbers stack. This is how men my age process a hit. We don't punch walls. We print receipts. The total crept toward a number that could buy a decent pickup. $90,000. On her card. In her name. With her signature. And right above my keyboard was her text, the one that ended us. Cause and cost, side by side. I took a slow breath and started gathering proof. Back at the kitchen table, I did what men my age do when life gets loud. We get out a pen. I wrote each line in a neat column. Presidential suite, 3 nights, champagne with labels I can't pronounce, car service that charged by the hour, and that charter jet, the kind of flex folks post online to look important. I added like I was balancing a checkbook after Little League fees and a leaky roof. The total climbed, steady as a truck up a long grade. 82, 86, 90. I circled it. $90,000. I pictured the pickup I'd almost bought last year and how she'd called it impractical. Funny word for a jet. I didn't feel rage. I felt clarity, the kind you get when you finally read the line on the bill that explains everything. The text that ended us sat open on my phone, bright as a road flare, 'cause in one hand, cost in the other. I needed air and coffee, so I took the short drive back to the Route 9 diner. Same bell, same booth. When the screen lit up with that total, a dry laugh slipped out of me, more breath than sound, the kind that means, well, there it is. The waitress paused with the pot. You okay, hun? I nodded. I'm fine. And for the first time all night, it was true. Some men yell, some punch sheetrock. I pressed print. I paid the tab, left a good tip. She's worked more midnights than I can count. And headed home with a plan simple enough to follow with no sleep. Print every statement, screenshot every charge, stack it clean. While the pages fed through the printer, I pictured Saturday mornings mowing the yard, oil changes in the driveway, the life built piece by piece. If she wanted everything, she could start with these pages, proof that choices carry price tags. The last sheet slid out warm. I spread everything across the table like a coach laying out a game plan. Deed first, purchased 2 years before the wedding. Separate savings, my deposits, my name. The joint account with the predictable rhythm of utilities and groceries. Text messages printed large enough for a judge to read from across the room. I dated every page, circled what mattered, and slipped it into a stiff manila folder you don't buy unless you mean to win. There's a point in a man's life where fear gives way to forward motion. I felt it right there between the stapler and the coffee mug. This wasn't about punishment, it was about boundaries. What's mine stays mine, what's yours you pay for. By the time the sun pushed a pale strip across the blinds, the stack looked like a project I'd finish on schedule. I set the folder by the front door with my keys and took one steady breath. Defense ready, offense loaded. Monday came with that cold, humming light every office knows. Colleen's lobby smelled like fresh paper and strong coffee, comforting in a way hospitals never manage. She shook my hand like she meant it and didn't waste a second. I slid the folder across her desk. She opened it like a mechanic lifts a hood, eyes moving quick, expression flat. Text confession? I pointed. She read it, then the charges, then the deed. Somewhere in the middle of page 3, the muscles in her jaw relaxed. Michael, she said, this might be the easiest case I'll have all year. I didn't smile. I didn't need to. What I needed was a path from here to done without drama. She walked me through the steps like she'd done it 1,000 times. File the petition, attach exhibits, get a temporary order. I'd built roads. She built exits. For the first time since the text, I felt the ground stop moving under my boots. We got to work. She slid over the engagement letter. I signed where the tabs told me to. Then we made a clean list. Marriage date, purchase date on the house, separate accounts, joint bills, her employment history, or lack of it. I handed over copies and kept the originals in that folder like a man guarding his toolbox. Colleen dictated to her assistant with the calm speed of someone ordering breakfast. Specific, no fluff. We'll file today, she said. We'll also request a temporary restraining order. Given the text, we can argue protection of property and peace. I nodded, not because I wanted a fight, but because I wanted no more scenes in my own kitchen. She outlined timelines, service by midweek, preliminary hearing dates, what to expect and what to ignore. When we stood, she squeezed my shoulder once, professional and solid. "You did the hard part already," she said. "You stayed calm." I walked out carrying less weight than I brought in. Walking back into my place after Colleen's office, I didn't pace or rant. I set the folder on the table and went to work. The printer woke with a warm little whir, then the steady ch-chunk of pages feeding through. I laid everything out in order. Text screenshots, card statements, the deed, the utility bills that never miss a month. The stapler snapped. Clean. Final. Binder clips clicked shut like small seatbelts. It was the kind of rhythm a man trusts. Tools doing what tools are built to do. I slid plastic tabs on the edges and wrote names in big block letters so nobody in any room could miss a point. When the last page cooled on the tray, I stacked it all tight and slipped it into a hard black cover. On the spine, I printed a single label in bold: Lauren Caldwell. I ran my thumb across the letters until they felt real. Enough talk. The paperwork could start talking for me. By Tuesday afternoon, the folder had miles on it. Colleen's assistant met me at the counter with a nod that said, "We've done this before." We filed. The clerk checked names, dates, papers, no drama, just the soft slam of a date stamp that echoed longer than it should have. Back in the parking lot, my phone pinged. One email. Scanned copies of everything we'd just put into motion. I sat there in the cab and let each PDF open like a new lock, clicking open on a door I'd been leaning against for years. Then another email slid in. Short, official, plain as a porch light at dusk. Temporary order granted. I didn't cheer. I didn't high-five the steering wheel. I just exhaled the kind of breath men forget they're holding, and sent a quiet, "Got it," to Colleen. The sun was low over the grocery store across the street. A couple argued about cereal in the lot. Life kept moving. So did I. At home, the house felt honest. No perfume, no performance. I opened my laptop and pulled up the credit card statement, $90,000 line by line. I forwarded the PDF to Lauren. No subject, no note, no need. Then I attached one more file, the temporary order, not a threat, not a speech, just the facts, delivered clean. I watched the little paper airplane icon shoot off and disappear, then closed the lid and stood there a moment, palms easy on the counter. Men learn that the loudest message isn't volume, it's certainty. I didn't owe anyone a paragraph. I owed myself a boundary. I set my phone on the charger across the room where I couldn't reach for it out of habit. In the fridge, a leftover sandwich waited. I ate standing up, staring out at the porch light shining on a clean driveway. If she wanted a scene, she'd have to stage it somewhere else. This house was now a quiet room. The first buzz came before the plate hit the sink, then another, then a cluster, like hail on a tin roof. I glanced once, her name, her mother, a number that read unknown. I set the phone face down. It kept humming, insisting, vibrating toward the edge of the counter like it wanted to jump. I picked it up, scrolled to settings, and shut every sound off. No fight tonight, no answers, no explanations. In the bedroom, the sheets smelled like detergent and nothing else. I lay down and stared at the ceiling fan cutting slow circles. A man who spent years bracing for the next argument learns to sleep light. But that night, the quiet felt different. It wasn't absence. It was protection. The phone kept trying across the hall, dim and far away, until even that faded into the dark. I thought of the label on the folder, the stamp on the email, and the porch light. Then I slept hard. Morning brought its own kind of weather. Blue sky, coffee steam, a kitchen table that finally looked like my table. I heard her before I saw her. Tires on gravel, doors unlocking, the quick click of heels on concrete. Designer luggage bumped the threshold like she still lived here. I didn't get up. I just nodded at the large envelope on the counter. Her eyes found her name on it and narrowed. She tore the seal too fast. First page, the temporary order. Her mouth set hard, then faltered. Second, the filing details. Third, the statement. Her face did the math, confidence to confusion to panic, like a time lapse you'd rather not watch. She looked at me as if a speech might fix it. I kept my hands around my mug and let the seconds do the talking. The house was quiet enough to hear paper slide against paper. After a long beat, she said, "You can't do this." I took a sip and pointed to the documents. "It's already done." She jabbed a finger toward the living room like square footage could argue her case. "This is marital property," she said, louder than the room deserved. I slid the folder across the table and opened to the copy I'd flagged. Deed, purchase date, my name alone, 2 years before the wedding. "Read the top line," I said. She didn't. She stared at me instead, testing if volume could beat paper. Men learn this lesson in hardware aisles and break rooms. The label matters. I tapped the date with my coffee spoon. "You can't just kick me out of my house." I let that hang for a beat, then corrected her the way you fix a level on a wall. "It's not your house," I said. "It's mine." Her mouth tightened. "We're married." I kept my voice even. "We were married. Past tense." The words didn't feel cruel. They felt accurate. In the quiet that followed, even the refrigerator hum sounded like it took my side. She softened fast, the way people do when the first strategy fails. "Okay, look," she said, palms up. "We can fix this. Let's try counseling." Men in my age bracket hear that word and picture sitting on a small couch paying someone to rename the same fight. I shook my head once. "There's nothing to fix." She blinked like I'd spoken a language she didn't understand. "You don't mean that." I didn't argue. I just turned my phone so the screen faced her. The text thread was bright and simple, the kind of evidence that doesn't need a speech. "Slept with my ex last night." She looked at it, then at me, then at the kitchen window as if daylight might offer a better version. "I was confused," she tried. "It was a mistake." I scrolled up, letting her read her own sentences again. "Choices don't become mistakes because it's Monday morning." I set the phone down. We were done with bargains. Her eyes landed on the statement and stayed there, the way a person watches a storm roll in and hopes it turns. Line by line, her face kept pace with the numbers. Sweet, champagne, car service, jet. I watched her hands. They went from steady to tremble like a truck mirror on a rough road. "You're paying this too," she said, voice thin. I kept it simple, the way a good foreman gives instructions. "No, I'm an authorized user. That means the card is in your name. You signed. You're responsible." She shook her head, like denial could erase ink. "That can't be right." "I've been wrong plenty in my life. This wasn't one of those times." "Call the company if you want. Ask them who owes what. They'll tell you." She stared at the total again, as if numbers might blink first. Men don't need to gloat when the facts are doing the work. I just let the paper sit between us. That night, my phone lit up with her name. Again. This time, the voice was different. Soft, cracked, rehearsed. "I made a mistake, Michael. I miss us. Can we talk?" I could almost hear the script rustling behind her tone. Apologies after evidence never sound right. They sound like closing arguments. She said she was seeing a therapist, that the trip meant nothing, that she'd been lost. The words lined up perfectly, too perfectly. Then came the real reason. If we fix this quietly, maybe we don't have to involve lawyers. There it was, the offer, the bait. I let the silence stretch until it made its own answer. "Lauren," I said, calm and even, "you're practicing for a call that never happens." The line went dead, and for the first time that week I smiled, not because I won, but because the mask had finally spoken for her. She dropped the statement like it burned. "You set me up," she snapped, grasping for a handle that wasn't there. I almost felt bad that the only thing in reach was reality. A laugh slipped out, dry, quick, more surprise than joy. "I set you up?" I said. "I made you cheat? I made you book a jet and a suite?" She opened her mouth, closed it, tried again. Anger can't do math. I leaned back and let my hands rest on the mug, palms warm. "If I had that kind of power," I said, "we wouldn't be here." She flinched, and I realized the line that wanted out was simpler, cleaner. "I didn't know I had that kind of power," I added, and left it there. Men my age learn timing beats volume every day of the week. Outside, a delivery truck rattled past. Inside, she stood in a house she no longer owned and reached for a story that wouldn't hold. 2 mornings later, an envelope showed up with my name written in that same looping script I'd seen on every grocery list for 8 years. Inside, a handwritten apology. No excuses, no lies, just pages of "I'm sorry" and a photo of us from a trip I'd forgotten. For a minute, I almost believed it. Then I noticed the last line. "Please reconsider before the attorneys take everything." That word, everything, ruined the whole letter. It wasn't about love, it was about assets. I folded the note, slid it into the folder with the rest of the paperwork, and wrote one more line at the bottom. Emotions don't belong in evidence. That's when I knew the reckoning wasn't over. It was evolving. Some wars end with shouting. Mine would end with signatures. I don't like scenes, and I don't like surprises at my own kitchen table. I called the non-emergency line the way you call for a tow. Calm, clear, facts only. "I have a temporary order," I said. "She's here collecting personal items. Could you send someone to stand by?" The cruiser's lights washed the driveway in quiet red and blue. 2 officers stepped in, hats off, respectful, the way pros walk into a situation that's already been sorted by paperwork. I handed over the order. They read it like men who read things for a living. "Ma'am," the older one said, voice steady, "you've got 24 hours to remove personal belongings. Nothing else leaves." She started to argue. He didn't raise his tone. "These are the rules today." That word, rules, took the heat out of the air. They stayed while she boxed clothes and books, silent guardians of a line finally drawn. When the door shut behind them, the house exhaled with me. After the officers left, the house went still again, the kind of quiet you only get after a storm. She stood by the boxes, eyes wet, voice small. "I loved you," she said, like a password that might still open a door. I kept my hands flat on the table because hands send messages, and mine needed to say steady. "No," I said, calm and plain. "You loved what I provided." The words sounded harsh, but only because truth doesn't come with decorations. She winced as if I'd flipped a light on in a dark room. I could have filled the silence with old promises or new compromises, but middle-aged men learn the cost of talking past the point. Love is work and walls and showing up when it's boring. It isn't jets and threats and 33 words that end a life. She looked down at the paperwork, then at the kitchen we used to share, and I watched the last of the argument leave her face. The rest of the night sounded like a moving truck in miniature, hangers scraping, drawers opening, suitcase wheels thumping over thresholds. I put on headphones, not for music, but for a thin line of peace, and stretched out on the couch like a man camping in his own living room. Every hour or so, the house shook with a door or a box, and then it would settle back to the quiet I'd been chasing. Somewhere near 3, I dozed. By morning, the sun found the stainless steel sink and turned it into a strip of white. I walked into the kitchen and saw 2 things that felt like punctuation. Her key in the center of the counter and a note in block letters. "You'll regret this." I picked up the key and felt the weight, familiar and finished. The note went into the trash with yesterday's coffee grounds. Regret belongs to mistakes. This wasn't that. This was a decision with a clean lock on it. The phone started up again before I'd poured the second cup. Ring, pause, ring. The rhythm of somebody throwing everything at the wall. 37 missed calls stacked into a small tower of nothing I owed. I blocked her, then her mother, then the unknown numbers that smell like trouble, even without names. When the screen finally went quiet, an email popped in from Colleen. Opposing counsel filed a motion, temporary support, access, the usual pressure. I stared at the subject line until my coffee went cold, then typed back 3 words that covered everything I meant. No settlement, ever. Men in my age range don't hate the game. We hate moving the goalposts after the whistle. I wasn't going to buy peace I could earn by holding the line. Colleen replied within minutes. "Understood. We push forward." I plugged the phone in across the room and stepped outside. The morning smelled like cut grass and second chances. The mailbox flag was down. So was my blood pressure. By Friday, we were seated across from a conference table that had seen 100 versions of the same conversation. Her attorney wore a suit that looked expensive and an expression that practiced sympathy. He used words like distress and stability and temporary support, as if vocabulary could repaint the last week. Colleen didn't sigh or scoff. She just opened the folder and started placing pages on the wood like a dealer with a sure hand. The text first, "Slept with my ex last night." Then the statement, "Sweet, champagne, jet," highlighted in neat yellow lines. Then the deed. She didn't raise her voice because paper doesn't need volume to carry weight. The room changed temperature the way offices do when heat meets glass. He adjusted his cuff and tried again, softer. Colleen slid the last page forward and let silence do what arguments can't. Men know that sound, the click when a wrench fits perfectly. That was the moment the case stopped being a story and became a file. The hearing took less time than a lunch break. We stood where people stand when life gets measured in motions and orders, and the judge read faster than anyone in the room spoke. Her lawyer tried the script, hardship, transition, the temporary lift a court can grant. Colleen waited, then stepped into the space with the same pages we'd laid out 2 days earlier. She spoke like a builder reading a blueprint, dates, signatures, terms. The judge scanned the text message, the charges, the deed. His eyes flicked to us, then back to the papers. "Motion denied," he said, voice dry as a gavel. No speeches, no moral of the story, just a ruling that felt like a door closing with a good seal. I didn't smile. Men don't celebrate the absence of a fire. We note it and move forward. Outside the courtroom, Colleen gave a small nod that said, "On track." I breathed, deep and even, and stepped into the hallway, already thinking about the next play. I'd barely cleared the courtroom door when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. A text. "Check your email, Michael. You'll want to see this." In the inbox sat a single file, no subject, just a heavy attachment. I opened it. There I was, in my own garage, last week, talking with Colleen, the folder in her hands. The angle was low, fixed, hidden camera. Lauren's voice came from off-screen. "See? He's planning this. She's helping him." My pulse stayed steady, but the blood in my ears roared. Who recorded this? Had she planted cameras before she left? Colleen called within a minute. "Don't react. We'll trace the source. This is a clear privacy violation." I nodded, though she couldn't see it. Revenge just changed teams. The woman who lost the money was now betting on lies. I powered the phone down, stepped into the sunlight, and felt the anger go cold instead of loud. Colleen handled the video before the hallway cooled. Her team traced the sender. It came from a prepaid phone tied to Lauren's name. We didn't need drama, we needed documentation. We'd barely cleared the courtroom doors when she cut across the hallway, fast and shaky, words already loading. Colleen stepped in, one hand up, voice even. "Orders still in effect." The phrase landed like a curb. I didn't stop. I didn't speed up. I just kept my boots pointed toward the exit and let the click of my steps drown out whatever came next. Men learn that attention is a kind of fuel. I wasn't giving her any. The elevator arrived with a soft chime. Colleen stepped in beside me. No pep talk, just presence. We rode down through mirrored floors that showed the same thing on every level. A man who'd decided. In the lobby, sunlight through glass felt like clean air after a shop full of fumes. Behind us, doors opened, voices rose and fell. I didn't look back. There's a time to argue, and there's a time to leave a room like it's on fire. I chose the second. That night, I took my place on the back steps with a cold beer and the kind of sky you only get after rain. The neighborhood hummed, sprinklers, a dog 2 houses over, somebody flipping a steak. I curled my fingers around the bottle and realized something simple. Peace has weight. You can feel it in your palms, in your shoulders, in the way your jaw unclenches without you telling it to. For years, evenings meant tiptoeing around moods, measuring words like salt. Now the only thing to measure was how long to sit before the bugs found me. I thought about the judge, the hallway, the elevator mirrors, and how ordinary victory actually looks. No fanfare, just a man not needing to explain himself. The screen door creaked when I went back in. The house smelled like cut grass and lemon cleaner, like a place people rest in. I put the empty bottle in the bin and let the quiet stay where it was. The next afternoon I met Cooper at the gym. Nothing fancy. Rubber floor, mirrors with fingerprints, old speakers that make classic rock sound tougher than it is. We went set for set, the way men do when they've stopped trying to outtalk a problem. Push, breathe, rack. The bar felt honest in my hands. Sweat hit the mat. My head cleared the way engines clear when you finally change the filter. Cooper didn't pry. He spotted, counted, nodded. After the last set, he wiped his hands and said, "Drink?" It wasn't about beer. It was about belonging, about someone saying, "You're still in the lineup." We grabbed our bags and stepped into late sun that made the parking lot look kinder. I caught my reflection in the truck window. Tired, sure, but not hollow. Pain doesn't vanish. It just learns to ride shotgun when you're driving the route. "Yeah," I said. "Let's go." He grinned like a man who knew the right answer was yes. We found a small bar with baseball on mute and a chalkboard that still listed last week's special. Wings hit the table, cold beers followed, and the day eased its shoulders. Cooper asked how it was going, not prying, just tossing the ball across the yard. I gave him the short version: text, filings, hallway, done for now. He shook his head. Man. We watched a replay of a double play, both of us appreciating how clean work can look. Somewhere between hot sauce and the second beer, I said it out loud, the sentence that had been steering me for days. You can't fix someone who doesn't want to be fixed. It sat there on the table, not bitter, just true. Cooper nodded slowly, the kind of nod that says he's seen a different version of the same story. We paid, tipped heavy, and stepped back into the kind of evening you don't notice until you're finally present for it. On the drive home, my phone buzzed with a message from Colleen. Quick update. I called from the truck with the windows cracked, night air pushing through. Opposing counsel says the ex is gone, she said. Disappeared the minute the money dried up. She let it hang there like a test. I didn't take it. Understood, I said. No victory lap, no speech about karma. Men learn that gloating turns you into the thing you walked away from. I parked in my driveway and sat for a minute, engine ticking as it cooled. Porch light on, hedges neat, a couple across the street arguing softly about trash bins and schedules, the unglamorous soundtrack of normal. Anything else I should know? I asked. Not today, she said. We're ahead. We hung up. I stood there a moment, keys in my hand, grateful for small, solid things. A door that locks, a bed that's mine, a calendar without court tomorrow. Then I went inside. The next morning, Graham texted a screenshot, her profile picture, a friend request, a flurry of mutuals. You want me to accept? He wrote with a laughing emoji that knew better. I called him on my lunch break, sat in the truck with the AC on low. Let it sit, I said. Or block it. Your call. He chuckled. You're cold, man. I thought about it and shook my head, even though he couldn't see me. Being kind to disrespect is letting it happen twice. He went quiet, then said, That's going on a t-shirt. We talked about work, about his kid's school, about the way August heat makes every job site feel like a test. Before we hung up, he said, You good? I told him the truth. Better every day I don't explain myself. I set the phone down and looked out at the lot. Guys hauling lumber, a foreman pointing. The simple motion of a day earned the right way. That was enough. On the way home, I stopped at Target for paper towels and light bulbs, the kind of list that proves a life still runs. Near the coffee aisle, Melissa from Lauren's book club spotted me. She hesitated, then walked over, voice soft. Hey, Michael, I'm sorry about that weekend. We didn't know. I nodded. Not your fault. She glanced around, lowered her voice. Is it true about the card? 90? I held her eyes and gave her the clean answer. It's true. I didn't add a speech or a smirk. She exhaled like a person hearing a number they hoped was smaller. She's been calling me, Melissa said. I'm keeping distance. I shrugged. That's probably wise. We traded small talk about coffee brands and sales on laundry detergent like two people standing on normal ground. When we parted, I realized I felt no urge to retell the story. Sometimes dignity is just leaving out the parts that would win you points you don't need. That night the house was quiet enough to hear the ice maker dump a tray. An email blinked from Colleen. Offer from opposing counsel. Split the credit card debt. Half. I stared at the screen until the cursor felt like it was breathing. Some men would do the math. Pay $25 now to save $75 in court and time. But math can't calculate respect. I typed 3 words, each one steady. Not $1. I hit send and felt the decision lock in like a seatbelt. 10 minutes later, her reply landed. Understood. Proceeding. I closed the laptop and stood at the window, watching my porch light cut a neat circle on the lawn. We live by the lines we enforce. I wasn't buying quiet. I was practicing it. The phone stayed face down. The TV stayed off. I washed a dish, wiped the counter, checked the deadbolt, and let the day end on my terms, without negotiation or noise. Before sunrise, I laced up and stepped into air that felt like it still belonged tonight. The first block is always the worst. Knees complaining, lungs bargaining, brain offering excuses like free samples. Then the rhythm came. Left, right, breath. The town looked different at that hour. Newspaper sleeves on driveways, porch lights blinking out, one old guy watering his tomatoes like a prayer. I kept it simple. No music, no metrics, just the steady scrape of sneakers on pavement. Somewhere past mile 2, the thought arrived clean and unforced. Body follows mind when mind is firm. I didn't say it out loud. I didn't need to. Every step said it for me. By the time I looped back to my street, sweat had written its own story down my back, and the sun had climbed enough to put a gold edge on the roofs. I walked the last 20 yards, hands on hips, heart thudding like a good engine after a long haul. Sunday, I tossed the old tackle box into the bed of the truck and drove out to the lake. The ramp was quiet, just 2 other guys who nodded the way strangers do when they share the same cure. I pushed off and let the boat drift past the reeds until the water went flat as glass. Cast, wait, reel. The clock didn't matter out there. Neither did court dates or statements or the parts of the story other people chew on like gristle. I caught one decent base and let it go, then another for luck. A dragonfly balanced on the tip of my rod like a dare. That's when it settled in me. Not like a punchline, more like a landing. I didn't need to win. I needed to be free. Winning meant keeping score. Freedom meant putting the pencil down. I reeled in slow and watched the ripples disappear into themselves. Then I anchored and let the silence do its work. On Monday evening, my phone lit up with a number I didn't recognize and a voice I knew too well. Tears, ragged breathing, words tumbling over each other. "I have nothing," she said. "I'm living with my parents. I can't sleep. I can't pay. Everything's falling apart." I stood at the kitchen counter with the dish towel over my shoulder and let her finish. Years ago, I would have jumped in. Solutions, loans, explanations. Men like me were taught to plug leaks, even on sinking ships. Not anymore. "Listen," I said, steady as a level on fresh drywall. "You're suffering from your choices." She tried to call it a mistake. I didn't argue. I just repeated the line every adult learns sooner or later. Choices have costs. You sent the text. You signed the charges. The silence on the line was long enough to count. I wished her well, said I wouldn't be taking more calls, and hung up. I blocked the number and turned back to the stove. I finished dinner like a man finishing a small job. Salt, pepper, plate in the sink, water running low. I picked an old movie I've seen a dozen times because familiar plots are better than new problems. The phone stayed face down on the counter, and the room stayed the size of the room, not the size of the past. I laughed once at a line I always laugh at. I checked the weather. I folded a t-shirt still warm from the dryer. Hours slid by without a single thought about her, not one, and I noticed it the way you notice pain only after it leaves. That's its own kind of victory. No fireworks, just the absence of an ache. I locked up, made a note for the morning, and turned off the lamp. Men measure progress in small, honest ways. 8 hours of sleep, a truck that starts, a day without an argument. That night gave me one of those measures, clean and quiet. Tuesday brought a thick envelope from a return address that screams courthouse. I opened it at the table with a pocket knife I've had since before the wedding. Lawsuit from the card company. Principal, interest, fees. Total, $97,000 and change. They printed the number like it might scare someone into paying. I read each page once, then again, and felt nothing dramatic. It wasn't my storm to stand in. I sent a photo to Colleen with a short note, "Received, not mine," and filed the packet behind a tab that didn't exist in my life 6 months ago. Men learn to separate fires, the ones on your property and the ones across the road. You don't run your hose over there just to look like a good neighbor. I slid the folder back, wiped the table crumbs into my hand, and turned to the next task. The line stayed where I drew it. I don't pay for what I didn't break. By midweek, HR called me down like it was a routine ergonomic check. Janet closed the door and kept her voice kind. She showed up at the front desk asking for you. Security turned her away. "We've documented it." I nodded, grateful and tired in the same breath. Work is the one place men like me go to be exactly what the name says, useful. I gave Janet a copy of the temporary order and asked building security to add her photo. The guard didn't blink. He just clicked a few keys and said, "We'll keep eyes out." That's all I wanted. Clear boundaries, no scenes in the lobby, no drama in the stairwell. I rode the elevator back up with a coffee I didn't need and a calm I did. The guys on my floor were arguing about which wrench set lasts longest. I weighed in, smiled once, then got back to the plans on my screen. My job stayed my job. My life stayed mine. That evening, Graham called with a tone I know from busted pipes and bad news. "She came by the house," he said, crying, asking if I'd seen you. I felt the old urge to smooth things over, then let it pass like a truck in the next lane. "I'm sorry she dragged you into it," I said. "I'll handle it." I hung up and emailed Colleen everything. Time, what was said, that he shut the door. She replied in minutes. "We'll file for a violation of the order. Emergency motion." I sent Graham a quick text. "You did right. If she comes back, call it in." Men look out for each other by keeping rules simple. I printed the email chain, slid it into the folder, and set my alarm for early. Tomorrow would be paperwork and a judge, maybe a stern lecture she wouldn't like. Tonight would be a locked door, a porch light, and a house that understood the quiet I was trying to keep. Morning brought the kind of courthouse air that smells like paper and old arguments. We sat at a small table while the clerk cued the security footage, grainy, time-stamped, enough. There she was at my office lobby, at Graham's door, hands moving fast, eyes red. Graham gave a calm statement. The building guard read his. Colleen didn't posture. She pointed. Dates, times, the line where the order said no contact. The judge watched, expression flat, like a man deciding whether a beam will hold. When he spoke, it wasn't dramatic. It was structural. Order extended 6 months. Any further violation results in immediate arrest and contempt. The words landed like bolts through wood. Square. Permanent. She started to say something. Her lawyer pulled her sleeve. We stood. I thanked the court, not because I was grateful for a fight, but because boundaries had a voice and a seal. Outside, the steps felt shorter than on the way in. I called Graham and said, "You're covered." Then I went back to work. 2 days later, Colleen called from her car, turn signal clicking between sentences. Opposing counsel is asking for a clean break. No assets, no support. She keeps her debts. I was parked outside the hardware store, staring at a rack of bungee cords and tarps and thinking how order comes in small straps. "Do it," I said. Not to punish, to end. We've all been stuck on projects that keep adding weekends. At some point, you cap the scope and call it finished. Colleen confirmed terms, signatures, filings, standard language about going our separate ways. I didn't need a victory lap. I needed a door that shut without sticking. I grabbed what I came for, new utility blades, a pack of batteries, and paid cash. On the way out, I held the door for an older couple arguing gently about paint colors. Real life hummed on, steady and unglamorous. Clean break sounded like that hum. It sounded like a truck turning over on the first try. We signed in a small room with blinds that rattled when the air kicked on. Colleen walked me through each page, pen tapping at the flagged lines. My name, her name, the sentence that separates two lives. When it was done, Colleen's phone buzzed and she glanced down. "Filed," she said, then looked up with a small smile. "Congrats." I nodded, and for a second my throat tightened in a way I didn't expect. It wasn't pride and it wasn't grief. It was relief. The kind you feel when a splinter you forgot about finally works its way out. In the hallway, the world didn't change. Same scuffed tiles, same elevator dings, but the weight in my shoulders did. I stepped outside and let the sun hit my face like a reminder that weather doesn't ask for permission. Colleen squeezed my arm once. "Go live your life," she said. "Plan to." I drove home with the radio low and the windows cracked, breathing easy. Time didn't sprint. It marched. 6 months later, my nameplate read Regional Manager, and the office had a view of a lot full of trucks that start at 6 a.m. I still brought my own coffee and still fixed the loose arm on my chair with a quarter turn of a screw. On the far wall, I hung a photo I took at the lake. Water flat, line cast, morning light like gold dust. People hang degrees and mission statements. I needed a compass. It reminded me that calm isn't something you wait on, it's something you practice. I called Cooper at lunch to talk gym meets and weekend schedules, then sent Graham a picture of an old wrench I found at a flea market. Solid steel, still good. My calendar was full of normal. Budgets, site visits, a birthday dinner with friends who bring potato salad and strong opinions about ribs. That life didn't feel flashy, it felt earned. On Saturday, I rolled drop cloths across the living room and opened a can the label called Warm Cedar. The first stroke over the old gray felt like a fresh coat on more than walls. I swapped out the sofa we picked because it looked good in catalogs for one that felt good after a long day. New lamp, soft bulbs, a rug that didn't mind boots. The house took the changes like a man takes a well-fitted jacket. No fuss, just right. I stepped back, paint on my knuckles, and said it out loud to the quiet that now belonged to me. My house looks like my life. Mine. I didn't mean possession. I meant responsibility. Every choice showed, so I chose on purpose. I framed the lake photo smaller for the hallway, set a bowl for keys by the door, and oiled the hinges that used to squeak through arguments. When the light settled and the room exhaled, I knew I'd rebuilt the part that matters. Home. After the paint dried and the house settled, my mornings found a groove. I laced up before sunrise, stepped into air that still remembered night, and took the same loop past mailboxes and porch flags. No playlist wars, just the old songs I know by heart, the ones that keep pace without asking for attention. Run, shower, coffee in a mug that fits my hand, a quiet 5 minutes by the back door watching the yard wake up. The day used to start with guessing someone else's mood. Now it starts with mine. I check the calendar, pack a sane lunch, toss a rag in the truck for whatever needs wiping down later. There's a comfort to simple systems, repeating them because they work, not because you're stuck. I used to call this routine. Now I call it recovery. When I hit the driveway at 7:10 on the dot and the coffee's already doing its job, I feel the new rhythm taking hold, smooth as a well-oiled hinge. Cooper caught me between sets that afternoon and grinned like a man about to start trouble. "Gym record day. You in?" We warmed up slow, checked collars, chalked hands. He loaded plates like a careful bricklayer. No hero jumps, just steady climbs. That's how grown men get stronger, inch by inch, not in internet leaps. The bar knurled into my palms, familiar and honest. "2 more," he said, and spotted me the way friends spot you on and off the platform. Close enough to help, far enough to let you try. I hit a rep that used to live in the land of maybe next month, then added 5 and did it again. No theatrics, no primal scream, just a clean rack and a breath I'd been chasing. We wrote the number on the board, wiped our hands, and laughed like kids who built something that didn't fall. Progress didn't fix anything in the past. It fixed the story I tell myself about what comes next. The next evening, I swung by Target for garbage bags and light bulbs, life's 2 most unromantic purchases. In the cleaning aisle, I saw her coming before she saw me. Hair pulled back, sweatshirt, eyes with that long, tired look. For a second, the world shrank the way it does when old scenes try to replay themselves. I let it pass. When our eyes finally met, I gave a small nod. No glare, no smile, just acknowledgement, the way you nod to a neighbor you don't owe a conversation. She slowed like she might speak. I kept moving, cartwheels clicking over the seams in the floor, the list in my head winning on points. There's strength in choosing not to refight a finished fight. At checkout, I bought what I came for and nothing extra. Back in the truck, I sat a beat and breathed steady. The past can knock. It doesn't get a key. I put the bags in the bed and drove home. Graham texted about a backyard barbecue, ribs, cornhole, bad music, good people. You coming? Yeah, I wrote. Just me. I showed up with a cooler and a bowl of something simple, and the kind of ease you bring when you don't owe explanations. The grill smoked like a signal you could smell from 2 streets over. Kids chased each other through sprinkler mist. The guys argued about brisket rubs like a Supreme Court case. Someone handed me a plate. Someone else slid a chair into the circle without a speech. We ate, told small stories that don't need fact-checking, and yelled good-natured lies about a lawn game that only matters in June. At some point, I caught myself smiling, not the polite version, the real one that sneaks up when your shoulders forget to guard. Leaving alone didn't mean being alone. It meant choosing where I sit. When I headed out, they said, "Same time next month?" I said, "Wouldn't miss it." A few days later, a long cardboard box waited against the doorframe like a dog that knew it belonged. I brought it inside, sliced the tape, and pulled back foam to find the new rod I'd wanted for years but kept calling too much. Sleek, balanced, the cork grip fitting my hand like it had been measured there. I looked it over the way men look at tools they plan to keep, checking guides, flex, finish, no ceremony, just respect. I leaned it against the wall and didn't feel that old twinge that says you should apologize for buying yourself something nice. You can't pour from an empty cup, and you can't fish well with junk. I set the receipt in the drawer with manuals that actually get read and packed the tackle with quiet satisfaction. This wasn't a prize for surviving. It was a promise about how I planned to live. Less noise, better gear, days that end tired for the right reasons. A few mornings after the rod arrived, my phone buzzed on the counter while the coffee finished. Colleen's name. One line. Officially filed. Another followed before I could answer. You're a free man. The words glowed on the screen like a porch light flipped on after a long outage. I didn't fist pump or shout. I just stood there with steam on my face and let the temperature in the room drop from crisis to normal. Paperwork had done what shouting never could. I texted back, "Thank you." She replied with the kind of smile you can hear. "Go live your life." I set the phone down, folded the dish towel, and realized the calendar in my head had space again. No court dates circling like buzzards. No calls I had to dodge. Just a Tuesday with coffee and a full tank. I took one slow sip and watched the sun pull a gold stripe across the countertop. Free felt quiet. I liked that. That evening, I sat on the back steps with a cold beer and let the day fall apart on purpose. The sun slid behind the maples, the bugs cranked up their little engines, and somewhere down the block a screen door popped and shut. The air had that clean post-rain smell, the kind that reminds you the world resets whether your life does or not. I thought about nothing and everything, the way the grass pushes back against your boots, the exact sound a can makes when you set it on old wood, the line of light along the fence. Alone used to mean missing. Tonight it meant room to breathe. I wasn't lonely, I was unhooked. I raised the bottle once, not as a toast to the past, but to the simple mercy of an ordinary night, the kind you skip right over when life is loud, the kind you remember when it finally isn't. I stayed until the porch bulb caught the moths. When the house went quiet, my mind replayed the road behind me, the text in the truck, the diner's neon, the printer's rhythm, the folder with her name, and that hallway where I didn't look back. It didn't feel like a victory reel. It felt like a lesson plan written in scars. Every turn was a tool I didn't know I'd need. And somewhere between the courthouse and the lake, I realized something simple. Silence wasn't surrender. It was strategy. Not sulking, not coldness, discipline. The kind that turns off sparks before they burn your house down. Strength isn't volume, it's control. I used to think calm was the absence of fight. Now I know it's the form of it that wins. I rinsed the glass, turned off the light, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel haunted by what was behind me, just guided by what I built surviving it. Men like me don't need slogans. We learn by bills and bruises. Every dollar has a story, every choice, a receipt. You either pay in patience or in panic. That card, that suite, that jet, they were invoices for illusions. But the real debt wasn't money. It was peace. And I'd been overpaying for years. I learned this. You can love someone and still say no. You can forgive and still walk away. Boundaries aren't walls. They're doors with locks you choose who to open for. I wiped the counter, checked the bolt, and wrote a mental note as clear as any contract. Never finance chaos again. Men talk about freedom like it's something you chase. It's not. It's something you enforce. And when you finally draw the line, the noise stops sounding like anger. It starts sounding like quiet earned. If you're still here, jaw tight, heart heavy, listen. You're not weak for walking away. You're not cruel for refusing to fund someone else's storm. Calm isn't numb. It's chosen. Start small. Gather proof. Call the right people. Lock the door. And drink your coffee hot instead of cold from waiting. Fix one thing. A hinge, a tire, a budget, a breath. And when the phone lights up with bait, let it ring. Respect doesn't explain itself. It enforces itself. You can rebuild from paper, from evidence, from silence. That's how men like us rise. No audience, no noise, just order. If any part of this felt like your story, type it in the comments. I chose peace, because choosing calm doesn't mean you gave up. It means you finally stopped renting your mind out to chaos. There are 3 things I keep steady now. First, evidence. Paper beats shouting. Screenshots, statements, dates, things that hold up when tempers don't. Second, the law. Not opinions, not social media. Actual signatures and seals. Third, calm. Not the kind that happens to you, the kind you build every time you breathe before reacting. Calm buys you seconds, and seconds are the space between breaking and rebuilding. That's all you need to turn the tide. Men don't need mantras. We need methods that work. Those 3 did. They kept me standing when everything leaned. And if you're listening right now wondering how to start with one of them. Pick calm, then build the rest. That's how I did it. That's how I got here. That's how you will too. So what now? Work still starts early, same coffee, same cruise, but the difference is in the weight I'm not carrying. My body's getting stronger, my circle's smaller, and my words heavier because I don't waste it explaining. I'm not chasing better, I'm building steady. That's the real rebuild men forget to film. No grand reveal, just consistent peace. A schedule that makes sense, a paycheck earned clean, a night that ends quiet. If you're rebuilding too, remember this. The new you isn't louder, it's clearer. I don't move on, I move forward. Boxes unpacked, doors fixed, bills paid, boundaries kept. Men like us don't need fireworks. We need mornings that make sense and evenings that don't hurt. That's not small, that's solid. That's the life we build after the storm. Tomorrow, before the sun rises, I'll drive to the lake again. The new rod rides shotgun, tackle sorted like a checklist that finally balances. Water flat as silver, air sharp with early chill. Cast, wait, breathe. If the base bites, good. If not, better. Out there, I don't count what I lost. I measure what I kept. A house that's mine, a mind that's quiet, and a peace that doesn't ask for proof. Winning isn't the noise after revenge, it's the silence after truth. I'll reel in slow, watch ripples fold into themselves, and let the day decide what happens next. Because calm isn't the end of the story. It's the part where you finally start living it. Roll it back one last time. The text, the diner, the printer's rhythm, the folder, the courtroom, the lake, the porch light. Every frame was proof that quiet isn't weakness, it's strategy. I didn't win by shouting. I won by refusing to play the wrong game, by choosing paperwork over chaos, breath over blame, and freedom over noise. If you've ever had to rebuild in silence, you already know. Peace is not the prize. It's the product of discipline. And if you think that's the end, you haven't seen what calm builds next. Because men like us don't fade out. We build new chapters quietly, one decision at a time. Drop a comment if you're still here. Type it simple. I chose peace. Then hit subscribe. Because the next story isn't about revenge. It's about what comes after you've won it right.